Hey, I'm JazzDev, and today I'm going to be participating in a game jam. But no one cares about that. Look at these arms. They're actually connected to my body. I know, right? They're not floating beside me like a brick. But anyways, I'm going to be competing in the game jam. If you don't know what a game jam is, how are you watching this? And I'll tell you now. A game jam is when a bunch of people compete to make a game within a set amount of time. A jam can last weeks, days, or even hours. Also, there is like a set theme that you have to base the game around. My game jam is hosted by Gmtk and lasts 48 hours or 2 days, and the theme is Roll of the Dice. But before I can start this game jam, I need to go somewhere else, change dimensions. Yeah, you heard me right. Game jams can be quite dangerous, you know? I could lose my left kidney or my left motherboard if I'm not careful. So see ya in whichever dimension this leads to. Whoa, this is cool. I'm in a pixelated dimension. And it has this cool boombox. Even a finished game jar? Whoa. There's nothing in there. Okay, before I start ranting about my game jam, I'm gonna put on some music. But anyways, about the jam. So the theme was Roll of the Dice, and I had no idea what to think of it. It was quite an interesting theme. Two things came to mind though. A board game and just randomness. Then I thought, what if the player had a dice and whatever number it landed on, they would get like a buff or debuff. And then I thought, why don't I make it centered around, if we're doing dice, why don't I make it like a poker theme? So I'm going to be making the enemies like playing cards and poker chips. And I wanted a mechanic at the start where the player would throw a dice onto the ground and boost themselves into the air. So I finished brainstorming and got into the game engine. For this game I'll be using the one and only Square engine, or Unity, because it's free to export games and I kinda know how to use it. So I got in the engine and began on making some simple movement like a double jump and, walking. After that, I began on simple enemies. I created a flying enemy and a ground enemy. They were pretty simple. For the ground enemy, I basically copied the code from the flying enemy and made it stay at a set Y position, or in layman's terms, I made the enemy stay on the ground. Then I made some sprites for the player and the enemies. The player sprite looks so good, it looks sick as. Bro, look at it. The flying enemy sprite, pretty good. And the ground enemy sprite, we don't talk about it. We don't talk about that walk cycle. And that marks the end of the first day. It was kind of productive, not really. Then the second day of the jam rolled around, and the first thing I did was make the buffs that the dice gives you when it rolls. The abilities that I came up with is an ability that takes one of your lives away, because if you roll a 1, then you're really unlucky. Then if you roll a 2, you get a speed boost. Don't have really good reasoning behind this. If you roll a 3, you get bullet spray because it's a lucky number. If you roll a 4, you get decreased speed because 4's unlucky. If you roll a 5, you get jump boost. And finally, if you roll 6, you get a triple jump ability because 6, bro, you're cheating if you roll a 6. Also, I made some UI for the dice and the abilities and the health bar. After all that, I got started on the score system, Basically, I wanted to have a bar which showed the wave progress, and a score counter. Also, this was about the time I wanted to change the type of game. I wanted to make it an endless shooter. This is because making a small Metroidvania game would be kind of annoying. Anyways, after the score system, I made a spawning system and a wave system. Both of those two things took way too long to make. At one point, I wanted to make like this card system, which would show you 2 cards, each with a buff that would help you, and you would have to choose between one of them. Here are the buffs on screen now. There's faster bullets buff, extra health buff, faster fire rate buff, a score multiplier buff, and a stronger bullets buff. And these would just make the game a lot more fun, but I didn't know how to implement them, and it was just way too annoying. So I scrapped that mechanic, and that's the thing about game jams. There are these cool things you want to add, but sometimes there just isn't enough time. Or you just don't have the skills, which is fine, especially for short jams like this. But anyways, the next thing I made was a lot of art. From the tile set to the background art. I also made a start screen, and a death screen, which just displays the score. The death screen was a little annoying to make because I had never experimented with it before. Basically, to make it, you get like this variable, or an object, and you just tell Unity not to destroy it when you switch scenes. And then you just get the variable, like whatever, you get the score, and yeah. And finally, the last thing I did was wrap up the game, added some sound effects, and named the game. If you're wondering what it's called, I called it a dicey situation. Yes, I know. I'm very sorry about that pun. But can you blame me? It was like 1 AM before I submitted it, and I was very tired. So I submitted it with about 5 hours to spare. So that's how I made a game in 2 days. And before this video ends, I just have to do one thing. Also, don't ask me how my game jam went.